Hello everyone, and welcome to my talk about harnessing the power of CDKTF, and especially how you can leverage CDKTF to improve, let's say, the efficiency of the platform team and to collaborate a lot more with every team part of your company. I think it's quite important today. Quickly, because we have only 15 minutes, I'm Jean Burlier. I'm a principal engineer and I'm building the platform team at Sanofi. Sanofi is a huge healthcare and pharmaceutical company that is like close to 100,000 employees. A lot of people also working around software engineering, data engineering, and data science. So being able to contribute and to have everyone gather and foster this kind of innovation and also sharing is something great for me, especially because I'm working on a lot of open source projects, mostly around the JavaScript and Rust ecosystem. For example, I'm a member of the Node.js project, also a member of the Express technical committee, and we are trying to move and to continue to improve this kind of those type of ecosystem. And of course, you can join me or discuss with me, or feel free to reach out on Twitter, on GitHub, on LinkedIn, or Twitter or X. Not really sure how we should call it that today. So let's go on for the expectation of a platform team. I think it's quite important to define that because a lot of people, a lot of companies have different expectation or definition of a platform team. So just being able to agree or maybe disagree on some part could be quite interesting. One definition I found online is a platform team is responsible for creating and maintaining the underlying platform that support the development, deployment, and operation of software application, which I would agree with it, at least partially. But for me, it's not a perfect explanation. Another one that is for me a bit closer to what I think a platform team expectation is platform teams are the building blocks that product team use to ship business-facing functionality. Products are built on top of platform, and those platforms enable product team to move faster. And I think it's quite a nice definition, but I think one specific part is really missing for us. And I think one point is really to know what's your end goal as a platform team, or the end goal of the platform team. Because if you don't know what your expectation maybe in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years, then it will mostly become some kind of a blob team, or at least a team where everyone will give you some part of the project that a product team don't want to maintain, that they don't like to maintain, or they don't think it's nice for them to work on. And for me, most of the time when I've been seeing that in multiple companies is without a vision on your platform team, most of the time it starts to becoming a support team where everyone throw you what they don't want to do, basically, which is not really nice, I will be honest. And one of the points that is missing on a lot of definition for platform team is really the developer experience. And I think it's really crucial to understand that developer experience, especially today, need to be the a good part of the ecosystem. How can you improve the developer experience? How can you provide services that everyone needs to build but don't want to build or don't have the expertise to build properly? You want help. You want you want to help them to give them the right tool for them or for the other team, product team, to focus on what they need to build for the business or build as a product, not going deep into which kind of setup do I need for my network to run properly or to be optimized or this kind of stuff. So that's the main idea behind developer experience for me, is lowering the mindset, or at least the brain power that every team will need to use to redo the same stuff that another team already did. And that's quite huge. And for example, some point on which we are working on our side, for example, we are still building and maintaining some building block. It could be AWS low-level or cloud provider low-level solution like subnet, VPC, authorization. Like there is a lot of points that need to be reused across every team. So this is one of the part. We also work a lot, and maybe we are not maybe not the main contributor or everything, but we are trying to own the library with reusable code as some kind of team in the middle that would propagate and help other team to work and to define library and how they should be used in the company and defined. So working on library with reusable code, it could be on front-end application with a design system, on back-end for Python or JavaScript, for example, to help build and maybe standardize how to log your operation, how to define some HTTP or reusable component around GWT and authentication. That's quite a lot of stuff that you can work on with multiple teams. Another one would be to work on transversal setup, and by that I mean there's a lot of APIs that don't or should not, at least on my point of view, should not be owned by one specific team or one specific product team. For example, you can include everything that would be authentication, authorization, maybe sending email, sending mobile notification. And let's say if you are working on a company that generate a lot of or handle a lot of document and you are going into some kind of documentless mindset, maybe your platform team will be the one handling the documentless solution because it will be shared across a lot of application, a lot of different applications. And I think one point that is really important, especially today, is a developer platform. It's quite important to have a good developer platform, especially now where you have technology like Backstage that can be implemented by a lot of people easily using JavaScript or TypeScript technology. It's way easier than it was a few years ago. I don't want to spend too much time on that. I'm one of my colleagues, so Josh will be speaking a bit more about Backstage and how it can help you improve and bring some change in a company. So feel free if you want to learn more about Backstage and how it's used in a platform team, feel free to listen to his talk also. And I think one of the last points that is quite important for me is the fostering collaboration. And it's something that is missing a lot. A lot of company and people are working on a specific, let's say, silo for their application. But here, having people, if you are working properly with a platform team, you can have people collaborate with everything you build. So everything we defined before could be a work that is maybe owned or led by the platform team, but where every other team can contribute. For example, library with Python, with React, with JavaScript and Node.js one, help also define and construct more building blocks that everyone can reuse, working or adding more transversal API that would bring more capability to everyone. I think it's a good way to foster collaboration across everyone. So in my title, I was discussing about and really putting the keyword for CDKTF. So let's go into that and how you can leverage CDKTF for your infrastructure as code. So quickly, Cloud Development Kit for Terraform TF, aka CDKTF, which be careful because there is also AWS CDK, which is really close but not exactly the same. So in the same mindset, be careful if you are looking for documentation, because even the code part is really close, but it's not exactly the same way to instantiate or to work with it. So be careful between two. And basically, CDKTF is just a way to use one of the language you may be aware or know already to provision and to build your infrastructure. And at the end, it will use Terraform to build it. 5 big technologies are compatible with that. So TypeScript, Python, Java, C#, and Go. From my point of view, I think the last one that is really missing would be Rust. So I do hope maybe to have a Rust implementation soon-ish. That would be great. But to be honest, it's not really mandatory, as today most of the company use or have people that work with TypeScript, if there is front-end application, Python for every people doing data, Java and C#, a lot of companies are using one of them, so it gives you already a lot of different solutions for that. So quick example on how it works. I completely took the example on the HashiCorp and Terraform documentation just to have an overview on everything. And the main idea behind that is to give you an insight on how you can work and generate and work with multiple providers, from your cloud provider, for example, AWS, to your on-call provider if you are using PagerDuty, or maybe monitoring one if you are using Datadog, or ticketing solution with ServiceNow. Pretty much all the big solutions today in the cloud does have an implementation using a provider in Terraform, which is pretty good because it gives you the capability to work across your full ecosystem. And one of the right and really good point, at least for me, is that CDKTF, like I said earlier, use technology that already be used outside of the infrastructure as code ecosystem, which means that people can just leverage and knowledge or experience with one of the language to be already almost familiar with how to use, or at least they don't have two barriers to breach. That would be a new language and a new mindset to work on infrastructure. So that's pretty good for me. And which also mean that you can reuse some of the code if it's needed on your infrastructure. You can reuse some of the code that could come from some library that you are building, which is for me a great end goal at the end. And here is some example of a base code, really simple one, but I guess even if you are not working with Terraform or TypeScript, you would be able to understand it really closely. So we have a base AWS setup class that extends a specific Terraform stack. You have a constructor, you instantiate a new AWS provider, you pass specific value like a region, a default tag, which is an array of objects. And it's pretty straightforward, I guess. And then you instantiate a new S3 backend, which if you already aware or you already use Terraform, maybe you remember or you know that it's just a way to say, hey, I want to store my remote state in this specific S3 bucket that is already existing, which is an easy way. The same way here, if we go through creating a few services, at least one service on AWS, you instantiate S3 bucket, you give him a name, and basically you store that in a variable which you reuse in a two other part of your code, and you create an S3 bucket versioning. So basically you say how your versioning will be configured. Is it, in this case, it's enabled, and there is, for the deletion part, there is no need for an MFA. Same way with S3 bucket ownership control, it's just a way to configure how the ownership of every object that will be pushed into your S3 bucket will work on who will be basically the owner. And again, I'm thinking like for, even if you are not working with TypeScript on a daily basis, but are working with another oriented object language, you are almost aware of being able to decipher that quite easily. Same way if you are not really working with Terraform a lot. And quickly, it was a quick introduction, or at least a few word on Terraform and CDKTF. For me, how can you use CDKTF for improving the developer experience across your full team? First part would be to build a base setup for every account. So let's say you are using AWS, you are working for a huge company, you may have hundreds of different accounts. You don't want to configure them by hand, you don't want to have something manual, it takes a lot of time. So writing that with almost a for loop across your full ecosystem is quite easy to do. And it means that you can build reusable services like a firewall, like the network authorizer, how to handle logs. Like there's quite a lot of stuff that you can build on top of that. And I think it's quite important, especially like if you are working a lot on a cloud provider, most of the services, for example, generate logs. You can have the logs from firewall, you can have your logs from your subnet, for your gateway, for your authorizer. And just storing logs is almost always the same way. You have a place where you want to store it, maybe a configuration, how many days it should be stored, or what do you want to store, which part only, for example, for an authorizer or firewall, are you logging only the part that are being blocked or everything, or you have multiple configuration, which means that you can reuse component or configuration of components. And especially the first part, even just on your stack, it's always great to be able to split and to separate your stack on multiple sub-function and reusable function, like always in every development and every language, because it's easier to update and it's easier to maintain at the end of the day. And especially if you want to write tests. And I know writing tests for develop for application, for infrastructure is not something that is done a lot, but I think it's quite important for that. And it's simpler to do. Reusability at the end of the day is a key, and even in your own stack, it's quite great. And the next one is how to export and publish your Substack. I think it's quite important that you're able to build components that could be reusable across multiple projects, not just your own project, but also the project from everyone, which will bring a lot more collaboration and across every team, because you will be able to share components that may be written in TypeScript, or you can also generate those components using HCL at the end. So it can be reused by people using Python or just normal Terraform. And the last point that is quite important for me is TypeScript with CDKTF. For me, it's a true full stack, which is not that easy to say, but with a bit of training, it's okay, especially because it gives you one language to operate everything from your front end, your back end, your infrastructure, and if you are working with CLI, also your CLI part, which is great. And also, for example, we take example on what we are doing here at Sanofi. We are able to rebuild the same capabilities a huge company that are known for fast deploy, for example, Vercel or Netlify, and you can almost simulate the solution in something close to under 1,000 line of code with reusable component that can be shared for your project, but also project that don't want to use a stack or a technology. You can test everything. And as an example for us, we take less than 5 minutes to deploy a new project, and especially because you still have the time to create the full infrastructure. But when it's being created, just having an update for a local environment take a few seconds at worst. So maybe between 1 to 3 seconds, depending on what you are building on that. And also the main idea behind that is to be able, with CDKTF, to think about the reusability at scale. For us, it's sharing code and modules and stack with, at the end of the day, thousands of engineers, especially because every project could import those stacks to reuse your code, especially because we are a pharmaceutical company, so we need to think about compliance by default. Everything that could be GDPR, SOC, HIPAA. So we have really strict configuration that need to be enforced across all projects. So being able to build solution that could be completely reused is so great for us. And it was quite fast. It was 15 minutes about CDKTF and platform team and how you can try to mix both. Depending on when this talk will be heard, I may have a multiple article around that. If not, I will be starting to publish that. So you have the link. Feel free to consult and to ping me on my social. So yeah, thank you so much for listening to me and have a good day. See you.